Okay, so this is the home stretch for the Colonial 604. I temporarily reinserted the cabinet to see, or the chassis in the cabinet to see if everything would line up okay now that I have those new rubber grommets under the tuning condenser. And it does if I reuse the original rubber pads that are in the cabinet for supporting the chassis bottom. I wanted to put some new ones in, but it looks like if I do put new ones in, it might raise it so that the dial is actually up a little too much. As such, everything still fits. Chassis bolts slide in, everything looks just fine. So at this point, all I really need to do is get the cabinet clean. And to facilitate that, I have the usual recommended procedure, which is to start using non-pumice. Usually it's Gojo. This is just a generic orange flavored. It's hand cleaner. No pumice in it because you don't want any real abrasives that could damage the original lacquer finish. And then on the top in particular, where I've got some thin spots, I'm going to be using some Restore Finish. I've never bought any of the stuff that actually has a tint to it. Seems like a lot of people just prefer getting a can of the walnut. I should probably do that too. I don't really use this very often because I don't have a ton of sets that still have the original finish. I have a few, but most of them are in pretty decrepit condition. And then once all that is done, I also have some Howard's Feed and Wax to throw on the outside to protect it. So I'm going to start at the top and then work my way down with the Gojo. But I wanted to take a closer look here at the top to give you an idea of what I'm dealing with. I'm not sure. The lighting in here is not great. I'm working with a single chandelier. So there's some alligatoring here, thin spot there, thin spot there. Some spots that look like maybe they had a cup or something sitting on it. And then there's some thin spots up here. I'm not too worried about the thin spots. Mostly just worried about trying to even this out and get all the dirt and junk off of it. Probably a decent amount of tobacco residue too. Pretty common with sets. The top is probably the worst part. There's some chips along the base on the feet. That's kind of par for the course with most consoles. They got kicked a lot. But the rest of it is still in pretty good shape, including the original Colonial decal on the front there. So that's the start point. I will catch back up with you after I've done the Gojo rundown and wiped that off. And then we'll see if the Restore Finish does me any favors on the top there. Okay, so I've finished the first part of things up here anyway. I don't know how this is going to come out, but I did the whole upper section and the top there. I got them Gojo'd, wiped that off, then went after it with some quadruple aught steel wool with the Howards on the top here to try and get rid of some of the more egregious damage. The alligatoring spot, despite multiple attempts, is still there, but I don't think it's quite as noticeable. Not unless you look really close, you'll actually see it. These two dark spots here, not much I can do about that without having to strip it because those are pretty devoid of lacquer anymore. And I didn't really want to start getting really aggressive with the steel wool. It'll probably have a doily put on it at some point. Anyhow, top and everything else seems to have cleaned up okay. And I'm going to let this dry before I even think of putting wax on it. But it does have a nice bit of shine to it, at least from the viewfinder here. So next step then is going to be working on the rest of the cabinet. Not sure if I do the front first or the sides. Might start with the sides, actually. And for reference, this is the sort of junk that comes off when when you clean one of these things after a few decades. Most of this, I'm pretty sure, is going to be tobacco residue as well as some miscellaneous dirt and dust from storage. This stuff tends to stick around for a long time. Okay, my fingers are still stinging from the Howards that I spread all over everything. but I'm actually pretty happy with how this cleaned up. You can actually see the grain on the sides of the cabinet now. Awful lot of junk on those. Not as much on the front panel though. But I think I got a decent amount of shine now. I love the tiger striping down either side of the cabinet and the inlay there, all very pretty. So I think that turned out pretty good. And take a look at the sides now. Grain's a lot more apparent than it used to be. And all in all, yeah, I'd say this turned out pretty good. I still gotta wait about a half hour for the Howard's, what's left on there. You wipe off the excess, but what's on there right now has to dry. Howard's, I believe, has a little bit of wax in it. Someone was mentioning it's got something in there that's going to thin, probably a little bit of lacquer thinner to thin the finish. And I think it's got lacquer retarder in it to prevent it from drying immediately, so that it helps reflow the finish a little bit. And then someone mentioned they tend to have a little bit of wax in it as well. So that that'll about do it for the cabinet now. At this point, I need to get the knobs reattached, plunk the speaker back in it, and then one of my viewers recommended that I do a good lengthy test of this to make sure I don't have any other failures due to heat cycling. Because that's honestly the ultimate test, is just getting it back in there and seeing if it behaves itself over a long period of time. Because these would have been used for several hours at a time when they were new, so got to make sure it could withstand normal operation. So I'm going to grab the speaker, get it screwed back in there, put the knobs back on, and see how it performs. Okay, so I got everything reinstalled, and I've been messing with it for maybe an hour or more now. It's not as great as I was hoping, performance-wise. I'm only using the stock antenna at the moment. I do get a little more gain if I attach my cheapy few feet of antenna to the connections on this, but not a whole lot more. The issue I'm having, well, outside of the fact that right now the volume is turned all the way down, and yet that Hispanic station is still powerful enough to just completely bypass it. Now that one sounds really good. My issue is the high end of the band seems to have a lot of static, and it's driving me nuts because I tested it against the Zenith in the corner that I did for the club, and I get no static on that set. And I don't know if that's because that set's a few years newer than this one, so I don't know if the circuit's better or what. I don't have a dedicated ground for this, but I also don't have a dedicated ground for that one, although that one is designed for use with a loop antenna, and I think it may actually have a safety cap on there so that the chassis goes to one of the lines to maybe couple it or whatever. This doesn't. Well, actually, no, I think it... No, this one does. It has one cap for that. Either way, what I'm getting...
Yeah, you can drive by the shop. Thanks very much. Thank you.
2 screws later, it's you back on the road. And bringing donuts by the shop for the crew. Kirkland Transmission, 42582.
Mike, Mr. Reality here. I had a question for you about Trump's poll numbers, specifically from that ABC poll that you talked about.
Unfortunately, now it's kind of late in the day, so there's not a lot out there on. Normally, I'd get sports a little under, I want to say about 950 kilohertz or so, but not getting much out there right now.
Just 167 a month. Yeah, and your biggest savings of the year. Schedule your free Zoom console now.
But most of what I'm getting is got static on it, and it gets worse on the upper end, as you can hear. Okay, so this is an addendum to my troubles yesterday. I was trying to tune this thing late in the afternoon, and I was getting horrid static across the band, and I could not seem to figure out if it was an internal or external problem. Well, now that it's the next morning, I can definitively say that it is an external problem. Right now, I've got the volume turned up, and I'm at a null between 950 and 1000 kilohertz, and there's nothing. It's just a light hum from the speaker, and it's silent. If I back up...
Welcome back in, everybody, to CBS Sports Radio. Jacob Albrecht with you here until 5 o'clock.
There's a little bit of background noise with that station, but the same is true if I go up to 1000.
No.
Israel, and you can see thick black plumes of smoke in the air, trying to take shelter wherever they can.
ABC News producer Bruno Nota, north of Tel Aviv, says schools and non-essential businesses will be closed tomorrow at least.
So that noise is pretty consistent with external interference. And I thought for a moment maybe I got one of the transformer primary wires from the power cord moved a little bit too close to other things of the chassis. If that were the case, I would expect to hear it across the band instead of just when I land on a station, and instead there's... Yes? Anyway. So that seems to have clarified that no, I don't have an issue. So here's the volume turned all the way up.
Screw up. Listen to it.
And that is all we get on a blank spot on the dial.
World Series runs and in agony.
Whenever. Unfortunately, we've had to do time and time again.
In a letter to House members, Democratic Whip Catherine Clark of Massachusetts.
So, there are no problems in there. That is fantastic. And it's time to get this thing packaged up and sent to its new home. So I am glad that I thought to try it again. Some folks online, I did a little bit of research trying to figure out what common causes were outside of external electrical interference. And the general test is if you connect the antenna lead to the ground lead and all the noise goes away, it's external. If you clip them together and you still have that noise on the dial, it's internal. Pretty simple, and I should have known that because I've literally done that before. But I'm glad that problem is no longer a real problem, and I am still using my little cheapy loop thing that I got from an old cable box as the antenna. I felt like installing a wire antenna on the inside of the cabinet somewhere, but I didn't want to use fasteners to put it in there. So I think I'm just going to leave her with this. It seems to work well enough. I'm going to have to figure out a better attachment method though, because the Fonstock clips that are on the end there, one of them is damaged and does not get a good grip. So I'll probably have to put alligator clips on the end of that antenna to get it to work well enough. And I think that will do it for now. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.